Hello, Waterloo Region. You're listening to Meet the Candidate on CKMS-FM 102.7 Radio Waterloo. My name is Bob Jonkman. In this episode, we meet Jodi Szimanski, the NDP candidate for Kitchener Conestoga. In Meet the Candidate, Radio Waterloo provides 25 minutes of free airtime to the Waterloo Region candidates running in the Ontario provincial election. This is not an interview, but 25 minutes of unstructured time. Candidates could tell you about their party platform, the local Waterloo Region issues they'll be tackling, why they're running, or what they do outside of politics. Note that the views expressed are not necessarily those of the Radio Waterloo Board of Directors, volunteers, sponsors, or advertisers. Now, let's meet the candidate, Jodi Szimanski.
Hi, Bob. I want to thank you and CKMS for allowing me to come and speak today. Let me talk a little bit about myself first and why I decided to do this. I was born in Durham, Ontario, into a family that with ties in farming, manufacturing, and entrepreneurship. I moved to Waterloo when I was 2 with my family, and things weren't always easy for our family. To make extra money once my parents bought my grandparents' home, we became like a boarding house. So we had 4 university or college age students living with us, with our family of 4 at any given time in a century-old home in Uptown Waterloo with only 1.5 bathrooms. And so my parents did everything they could to get ahead. I had watched my grandparents all work multiple jobs to get somewhere. I had my first paper route at around 8 years old. And from the time that I was legally able to work, I did more than one job at a time and saved money so that one day I could go to university. I decided to stay here in Waterloo Region and go to the University of Waterloo, mostly for their cooperative program. Back in those days, you could work co-op work terms and save enough money to not only pay tuition the next term, but also your living expenses. That's extra help. I met my husband in university, and then we settled down in Kitchener after we got married and bought a small starter home. Again, not something that's possible today, but with wedding money and some other money we had saved, that was possible for us. At the time, I got into marketing and advertising, and my husband was working in the bars, which is really tough when you have a young family. And so when our son was graduating from preschool, my husband decided that he wanted to go back to school, finish his bachelor's degree, and then go to teacher's college. During that time, we still had a mortgage and a child in activities and needed to pay for childcare. And so I started a little business on the side, doing marketing consulting as well, just to save up that money so that we could help my husband finish school and then go on to teacher's college. That was a tough couple of years. And it was totally worth it because my husband is a fabulous teacher, and it set us up for a better life. I kept working that job on the side, my own little gig. My husband taught summer school for several years just to try and get ahead. We worked hard to do that and then moved out to Wellesley 15 years ago. And it is a wonderful community. I've learned so much about the townships. One of the things I loved about the house that, again, was affordable when we bought it, was that we backed onto farmland, and I could see that every day. Growing up as I did and visiting family up in Durham and Hanover, one of my favorite things to always do was go to the farms. And so being able to see that farmland and cows grazing behind my house was something that was really special to me. In December, I really started thinking about running for office. I was tired of hearing about, that, people didn't feel supported in our community. I was tired of looking at the healthcare system that was failing so many people. I was tired of seeing, both in the University of Waterloo where I work and in the high school where my husband works, the costs of the cuts to funding that started with the Liberals and then continued at an even faster pace under Doug Ford. And then the biggest thing for me really was the more and more I learned about the fight for farmland in Wilmot. This land expropriation, I'll get into a little bit more later, but I think the way it's been done with all the secrecy strikes me as undemocratic. There's been no public meetings, and I really want to see change there. So what are some of the changes that we are going to make? Well, first of all, we're going to invest money in healthcare. Ford is currently not even using his budget for healthcare. And he's investing in all kinds of different crazy things like this tunnel he's talking about, or this spa at the old Ontario Place, which every household is paying $400 for. Instead, we would like to see that money reinvested into healthcare. We want to make sure that everyone has a family or a primary health provider. This is really important. So in the next 4 years, we want to invest $4.1 billion to recruit new doctors, give credentials to those existing medical professionals in Ontario and cut some of that red tape, which our current MP, who is working in the ministry, or who is the Minister of Red Tape, has not cut yet. We want to make sure that the doctors are seeing more patients. So let's cut the red tape and some of that administrative paperwork by making sure that we have centralized systems for referrals, for example. In a call with the OMA president last week, we heard that they spend up to 20 hours a week just trying to find referrals for their patients. If this was a centralized system, this could make it a lot faster. I think the other thing that we could do is that by making sure that every single person has a primary health provider, we're going to be taking some of the load off the hospitals. Right now, so many people are ending up in the emergency rooms just because they have nowhere else to go. And then we can return the emergency rooms back to emergencies. And I think this will help a lot. The problem right now is that a lot of people are retiring early from being a family doctor, and we need to stop that by making things better for them now so that it's easier to recruit those new doctors. Same goes for nurses. We want to make sure that we hire 15,000 new nurses over the next 3 years. To do that and recruit them, we need to improve their work conditions. And that means bringing in a safe nurse-patient ratio. I'm hearing while I'm knocking on doors from a lot of nurses that, they're facing a lot of violence. And they are good people. They realize that it mostly comes from frustrations because people are sick and they're tired of waiting in hallways and they want better service, but it's also some mental care health issues as well. And mental health is becoming an issue for our doctors and nurses because of this constant strain. Now, the Liberals created hallway healthcare. And, back then there was 1,000 people a day that experienced that. That's more than doubled under the Ford government. And he's closed ER and urgent care closures, which is obviously a big concern in the rural areas. I know for many folks that live out in the townships like myself, oftentimes if there is an emergency, you weigh whether you go to the Stratford Hospital or to Grand River just because of the wait times. And I was speaking with a gentleman at the door the other day that's had to wait in the hallway for 3 days. Now, we all know that when our health is bad, we need sleep, and our bodies need that to heal. How do you possibly sleep when you're laying in a hallway for 3 days and you feel like you're forgotten? And then there's the privatization that Doug Ford is leading us down that path. And we're seeing all these private nurses being hired to come in with the nurses that helped get us through COVID. And these people are making 3 times what the nurses in the hospitals are making. That is unacceptable. And we heard last night in the debate, Marit Stiles tell Bonnie Crombie that we know that she took $25,000 for private healthcare from insiders. The other thing I'm really hearing about at the door is education. Now, as I said, my husband's a high school teacher, and I work as a communications person at the University of Waterloo. And we both see those cuts every day. But I think the stories that are really breaking my heart at the door and on the phone is with elementary school teachers. The violence they are facing every single day in the classroom is out of control. We're not holding anyone accountable for it. We're constantly seeing classrooms, even at the kindergarten age, being pulled out to the library because a student has become violent with their teacher. This is everything from biting and hitting and using abusive language. And so many of our teachers at the elementary age are females. And so this is really gender-based violence. And so how do we fix this in the schools? Well, first of all, the large classroom sizes, we can't keep doing this. We're having teachers go off on leave or leave the profession because they're so burnt out and they're concerned for their safety and for the students' safety. And so we really need to make sure that we hire more education assistants. We need to make sure that we're hiring child youth workers. There are over 30,000 children on waiting lists for mental health supports within our school systems. We've got to bring down that number. I mean, we've also talked about fixing schools, and that's the infrastructure, because a third of the schools aren't actually in good working order. But this violence in the classroom is something that we really need to deal with. The other thing that the New Democrat Party is going to do is feed students. So bring in a universal school food program, because we know that the studies show that hungry kids don't learn. And so we want to make sure that there's learning available. And we also need to get back to the proper funding of schools. Ford has cut $1,500 per student in funding within our public schools. And that's not good enough. These children are our future. And we're not supporting them. And we're not supporting their parents. And we need to get back to a place where everyone feels safe in schools. At the post-secondary level, I don't want to see tuition rates go up for students. We see that we see what that does to students. We have more students than ever using food banks on campus. And many of them are living 6 to 8, especially at the college level, 6 to 8 or even more students to a house, sleeping in shifts because they can't afford anything. But we do need to increase the funding for research and innovation so that we can move ahead and invest in these students who are bringing new ideas, who are going to build new businesses that are going to help our economy. Now, the other big thing that I'm hearing at the door is just how much the cost of living is hurting families. Food bank usage is up 1 in 4 children in KW. Let me say that again. The food bank usage is up 1 in 4 children in Kitchener-Waterloo. Now, with our tech innovation corridor reaching, Kitchener-Waterloo, we see so many great businesses, and I see them at the university, these really young, energetic companies that are starting up, and from Wilfrid Laurier University as well. And so we need to make sure that we are supporting these students, and we also need to make sure that the economy is good here in Waterloo region so that we don't have any children that need the food bank. One of the things the Ontario NDP is going to do is give out a monthly grocery rebate. So for a family of 4, that could lead up to $120 a month to help put food on the table. We know the value of nutrition on health outcomes. If we do more proactive measures to take care of people, our healthcare system will be under less strain. This will, if people file taxes, this will be distributed just like the child tax benefit through the CRA. We're also going to address price gouging. Big grocery chains must post increased prices if they put up the prices more than 2% in 1 week. Now, we really need to find the balance between fairness and price gouging. But this is really important. We also need to fix the housing crisis. Homelessness has gone up so much in these last 7 years of Doug Ford. And so we want to start uploading a lot of the things his government has downloaded onto the municipalities back up at the provincial level. And we're going to use the Ontario Homes Plan. And this will work with not-for-profits and cooperative housing to build housing that is actually affordable. And for homeless folks, make sure that they have the supports available so that they can stay off the streets and stay in their homes. Now, one of the other things I want to make sure that I talk about, which is related to the tariffs, which I'm not hearing a lot about at the doors. There are some small business owners that sell to the US that definitely have brought up tariffs when I'm knocking on doors. But for the most part, that's not so much of an issue for them. But what we will do is make sure that we tariff-proof our Ontario economy. When the Liberals were in power, they made a mess of the procurement system, and often it was the highest bidder and whoever had donated the most money. And we've seen that with Ford as well, with the developers. What we want to do is make sure that we are procuring from Canadian and especially Ontario companies. We want to look at how we can do better interprovincial trading and then support those targeted industries, such as steel, tourism, and the auto sector. And we also want to work and protect our agribusiness. Over 800,000 people in Ontario work in the agribusiness. And so our farmland is more important than ever, which brings me to the fight for farmland. Jen Fenning of Fenning Organics said something that has stuck with me. Food sovereignty is sovereignty. And so these days, this is something that we really need to think about because of the threats that are coming from the south. And so if we keep losing 319 acres of farmland a day as we are now, we will not be able to feed ourselves. That soil takes thousands of years just to give you 1 inch of that prime 1 agricultural topsoil. And that's what we have in Wilmot. And yet, this American company that's been hired is pounding on doors and telling people to take an offer or else. That's not okay with me. And that's not okay with the neighbors of these farmers. There's a great group called the Wilmot Citizens Action Network that has been working very hard to support the farmers and educate people about what's happening in Wilmot. Because I will tell you right now, this is just the start. If it can happen there and this goes through, it can happen anywhere. And Doug Ford is digging in his heels and saying he supports this land grab. Bonnie Crombie has said she would pause and push reset. I don't really know what that means. But we will stop the expropriation and we will protect all Prime 1 farmland. That may mean, if elected, that I put forward a motion to debate to extend the green belt to protect this land so this never happens again. But you know what? It's not just about the land. It's the way in which it's been done. There are non-disclosure agreements and all this secrecy and no answers even to the people who are directly affected by having their land taken away. That is not good government. And for me, that was the tipping point in deciding that I was going to run for this election because I want to fix that. I believe in good government. I believe in transparency. And I believe that the taxpayers deserve to know where their money is going. And Doug Ford's putting $18 million of your money to help the region of Waterloo buy this land. This is not okay. And I'm not saying that we don't need more industry to make sure that we have enough work for people. We absolutely do. But there's also a lot of people working in agriculture. There are family farms. There are future generations who want to continue their family farms. And so we need to take a look at other places in Waterloo region where the land is not prime agricultural farmland and build industry there. And we have to stop pitting industry against industry. Because for Ontario to succeed, we all need to succeed. Agribusiness brings good jobs. It helps us procure locally and cannot be put at risk. Because once that soil is gone, it's gone. Now, some of the things that I'm hearing knocking on doors about what's currently happening with our MPP is that he doesn't listen. He doesn't answer phone calls. He doesn't answer emails. In fact, there was one group that finally got a meeting with him because they protested outside of his office, and it got media attention. I am not doing this to cut ribbons and be part of a photo op. I'm doing this because I live out in the townships. I understand and I see what's happening in the townships, and I want to make it better for people. I love this community. I've spent almost 50 years in this community, and it matters to me. And so I'm here to listen, to hear what folks want, and then I'm going to do the work and get it done. Because the people matter. And I don't want to see constant money going in the pockets of cronies. I don't want to see privatization of our healthcare system. I want to see people succeed and thrive. Thank you.
You've been listening to Jodi Szimanski, the NDP candidate for Kitchener Conestoga on Meet the Candidate. The views expressed were those of the candidate and not those of Radio Waterloo Board of Directors, volunteers, sponsors or advertisers. All Waterloo Region candidates were invited to meet the candidate, but some candidates have declined to appear on the radio and others have not responded at all. Meet the Candidate airs every weekday at 9 a.m. and 9:30 a.m. until Tuesday, the 25th of February 2025 on CKMS-FM 102.7 Radio Waterloo. Remember, the election is on Thursday, 27th February 2025. Show notes, podcast, and video will be available shortly on the Radio Waterloo website at radiowaterloo.ca/MTC. The show is produced by me, Bob Jonkman, in the studios of CKMS-FM. The music theme is Falling Sky by Jason Shaw of Audionautics.com and used under a Creative Commons Attribution Only 4.0 International License.